raw meat can be a delicious delicacy, or let's just cut straight to the point, it could get you real sick. So breaking down the science of what is safe and what is not safe is our kitchen scientist, the renegade kitchen himself, Dan Kohler.
Hey, Dan.
You know, before we actually get started, I want to underline something that Chef John said earlier, which is get to know where your proteins are coming from, right? It's the most important thing you can do. It's the most important safety step you can do at home. Get to ask questions of your grocery store, ask questions of your butcher, meet the people who are raising the food you're eating. Wouldn't you say that's it?
It is the most important thing.
It's a game changer, because truth be told, every living creature on Earth has microbes and bacteria and parasites growing in them, and it's just a matter of whether we are exposed to them and whether we can actually tolerate them, because some animals have things that we can tolerate and some don't.
All right, well, let's start with the fish.
All right, so we all kind of know sushi. This is probably the most famous raw food you can eat, or raw animal you can eat. And when it comes to the spectrum of microbes and parasites that live in things that we can tolerate, actually we can tolerate a lot of the things that grow in fish. But there are parasites. There are creatures and microbes living inside fish flesh, and one of the things that's done to kill a lot of them is a freezing process. A lot of those microbes are killed by very low temperatures. So most of the sushi that's served in this country is actually frozen before it's ever sliced.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, flash frozen.
Yeah.
Makes it easier to cut, too.
Absolutely. And you do that with steak, too. Freezing the proteins is not just for safety, but also for presentation. It helps you slice.
So the next thing that you have there is not only raw, but it's alive still?
Well, it's definitely not alive. You can see right here we've got some octopus tentacles, and these are still a little bit moving. Octopi are...
I would call that alive.
Well, it's not alive.
Moving.
It's separated from the brain. So, and that's actually a really important distinction to make here, because we want to talk about this as a traditional food that's eaten in Korea, and no one there, it's not considered that you're eating a live animal. It has been butchered in the same way that the sushi has been, because there's no brain left here. These are the tentacles. Now, the reason they still move, it's that old saying, running like a chicken with its head cut off.
Right.
Muscles actually still have the ability to respond to external stimuli after the brain has been separated. It does not mean that they're still alive, but it does mean that they are still reacting.
Okay.
And actually, so cephalopods and mollusks and bivalves and crustaceans are the next category we should talk about. So that's squid and octopi, mussels and clams, and then shrimp and lobsters and crabs. And if you're worried about the safety of the food that you're eating from the ocean, the thing that you're more likely to get sick from are bivalves, so mollusks and scallops and clams and oysters, and it's because of the way they eat. So bivalves have two shells. They open them up, they inhale a lot of water, and then they press that water out, and whatever is trapped by their sort of filter mechanism is what they eat. They are not discerning eaters, which means a lot of things can get trapped in there. Now,
you often hear that people will get sick from a raw oyster.
Yes, but again, if you know the provenance of your food, if you trust your fisherman, if you trust your fishmonger, these are not problems. These are problems if you don't know what you're looking at. If the fish smells really fishy, or if it leaves an indentation when you press in it with your finger, it shouldn't leave an indentation from your hand. That's a sign that it's getting very old and the proteins have been exposed maybe to more room temperature air or more bacteria.
Okay.
Gosh, you guys are really devouring the food here. We're waiting. Are you allowed? Yeah, go.
This is delicious. It really is.
So you eat it like an oyster shooter?
You can absolutely eat it just like an oyster.
Okay.
Now, moving on down, these are things that you're going to have more exposure to. You know, a lot of people order a steak medium rare or rare. They want it blood red in the middle, but does that mean that it is accessible to lots of bacteria?
Right, exactly.
So when we talk about beef, mostly what we're talking about is E. coli, and there have been a lot of E. coli outbreaks in this country, but you should know this, it's not because the meat, the muscle tissue itself is actually susceptible to bacterial growth, it's because of the way that animals are harvested and or raised. And when we talk about harvesting, we're talking about mostly confined animal feeding operations where animals are crowded into pens, and the E. coli live in their gut. And so when they're butchered, if any mistakes are made and any of the internal organs are nicked, some of that bacteria can get released onto the muscle tissue. So again, ask your butcher questions if they know where the meat's coming from. And steak tartare is normally made from one cut. You know, you take one steak and you chop it up.
Right.
But ground beef, especially at big grocery stores, can come from a lot of different animals all at once. It's just mixed together. And you want to ask questions because that's when we have big E. coli contamination outbreaks.
So like sushi grade tuna, it's sort of the sushi grade
Yeah, exactly.
quality. Okay.
And then, moving on down the line, look, we know raw pork can be dangerous because of Trichinella spiralis, but actually...
Is that why we knew it was dangerous?
Well, that's why
Clearly, it was the Trichinella spinalis that we all knew was
The
dangerous.
good news is that in farming practices in America, for the most part, that bacteria has been bred out. And so the pork board has actually changed their temperatures. You now no longer have to cook pork all the way to death. You can cook it to 145 to 160 degrees, and that gives you actually a nice, supple, internal temperature, a really beautiful cut on the inside that's not dry as a bone.
But chicken and turkey, you do have to cook to
Chicken
death.
and turkey cook all the way through.
Yeah.
That has not changed.
No, you know, even if you're pregnant, you're not supposed to eat chicken or turkey that is not completely like this piece of wood. Because it's really bad for a fetus.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks,
You're
Dan.
Smart.
All right.
You guys stick around. Up next, more from the family.